Like, let's just say that you're sitting in a pine thicket and you have to sit like real low, and you want to brush yourself in. Talk about the importance of like front cover versus back cover. Like, what is your kind of philosophy, or what are you doing to brush your blind in?
Well, that depends on the area too. But one thing I do want to find, I want to actually try to find an area too, whether it be the terrain. I like to set up somewhere too where it like mitigates a little bit of the wind. Like, say, if the wind's moving from my right to left, set up somewhere where that there's kind of like an obstruction where the wind is not going to hit me, then go up to the direction of the deer, kind of like a little bit of a blockade. Um, yeah, on I guess pine thickets. Uh, I like to do some either bring my own pre-trimmed like limbs in. I'll put some in my backpack like right before I go into the woods or bring some with me. I'll brush it in, but a lot of times though my little pop-up blind, I'll always usually put that behind me if I can, depending on the situation, and that's going to pretty much kind of cover my the back area where I don't really have to worry about finding a spot to brush up against, because in those pine thickets some of them are so spread out, you can't really find a good spot,
Mm-hmm.
Especially for the back cover. So that's where like a little pop-up blind or something like that comes in handy, so
Not like a enclosed pop up blind, but like one of those like the
it's like a little half.
yeah, the little
Yeah.
like wall blinds. Like
Oh
I've
yeah.
got like one of those little Newcomb blinds, and there's a bunch of like little stake blinds you can kind of put out and kind of use that behind you or in front of you based off how the situation lays
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
So you're putting it behind you. You
yeah.
said.
Hmm.
Okay. So is that more important for you to break up your outline from behind than in front, like that back cover aspect?
I always feel like the deer, sometimes might sneak up behind you, and to me, that's why I mainly put it there. But I don't really worry about the back cover as much as I do the shadows, and that's kind of hard to kind of determine where you're going to be until you walk around in there and figure out where the sun's at. But I don't want that my shadow to be where if I draw back, on a deer, my shadow of my arm's going to be like going across his face. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's more important than being brushed in. Especially with a ghillie suit on. So I'm confident enough the way my ghillie suit looks that I'm not really going to have that much ground cover anyway. Now, if I'm not going to be using my ghillie suit, I'm going to worry about brushing myself in more. So
Okay, I got you. That makes sense. And then also, when you're just sitting there hunting, I mean, you're having to be like super, super still. So, I mean, what is that like as well? Are you just having to scan with your eyes the whole time, and are you trying to like not turn your head? Because I'm assuming you have to be extremely focused the entire time.
I mean, yeah, it depends where you're at. Yeah, you can some of those pine thickets though, the if the deer are walking through it and you're sitting there, you can set yourself up your body to where you can just see the legs coming through. You know what I mean? And if you see his legs come through, he's probably not going to see you either. You know what I mean? You can make a little bit of movement, that way. But yeah, it can be challenging at times. It just depends. The layout of the land. I try to use some sort of obstruction or whatever. Like I was saying. So, man, it's yeah, you're getting into a wormhole, I guess. What you say?
Oh yeah, rabbit hole,
Rabbit hole.
baby.
Yeah, yeah, rabbit
Yeah,
hole.
man, ground hunt. You can't be playing on your phone, Jacob.
Yeah, I know that's why that'd be a struggle.
That old phone saves some deer's lives,
Save
man.
some big deer's lives. Let me ask you, how we talked a lot about like the pine country, and I do want to talk some more about, but also we're hunting like swamps. What's the difference when you're down there, as in like a lot of the setups and like the scouting aspect and like the areas that you feel confident going into? Like we haven't really touched on this for either kind of habitats, like more pine country versus swamps, but how much is like preseason scouting a factor versus like in-season scouting and find where the hottest sign is before you set up? Like what, like are there some areas that you like you'll preseason scout, like I'm just going to come back in here and hunt it? or is there some areas that you were trying to like scout your way back into till you find what you're looking for and then setting up?
Now I would if I had to, but I normally always, have that, spot already picked out. So I'm going to do some, preseason or postseason. If I get to my area too that I don't think that's hot at that time, it's kind of dried up, because you never know, you know what I mean, until you get back to that spot the next season. Even if you have pitchers, in that area, it might just be moving through there a little bit. But yeah, the postseason and preseason for sure. That's going to play a big factor into
So
it.
you're not necessarily doing a bunch steering in season. You're not necessarily just going out there, kind of working your way back into a section. I mean, you did mention that with like, kind of grid hunting a pine thicket, but a lot of times just because you're doing so much, especially postseason scouting, you're kind of finding a lot of this stuff way ahead of time.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, I'm just going to go into this spot. I already have at least a general idea of where I need to set up, how I need to set up in there. Maybe fine tune it once you get in there, get set up and ready to roll. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. But now I will, like, if I get to that area and I feel like, man, I'm not really seeing a lot of drop-ins, not really seeing a lot of tracks. I might kind of start moving closer to where I think the movement is. That's one of the big, huge advantages of being in a ghillie as well. So where you're able to just get up and move, at will, instead of having to come back off of a tree, making all kinds of racket, relocating. I think that's super, super huge with a ghillie.
Yeah, I can see that being a huge advantage. And also giving the flexibility, like say you start seeing some movement and maybe it's an area like I think of like maybe some of those swamps, and that's why I want to kind of get into the swamps. Like maybe you can see in some areas a little bit further than others, and those deer, like you start seeing a couple of deer or a buck chasing a doe 75 yards away and you can't get a shot whether you get a rifle in your hand or a bow, and you can kind of just when they move off you ease up and kind of work your way over there, set back up, kind of more in that position instead of having to drop out of a tree, go over there and get reset up, before a deer comes back through.
Yeah, your odds of getting busted is a whole lot greater too, so.
Now, also, so when you're hunting the swamps, what is the setup down there typically? Is like the environment of where you're finding a lot of sign? Because again, maybe we're taking pine thickets out of the equation. Maybe you find some pine thickets down there, but like, what's like the situation down there? I mean, is it just more hunting in and around the water specifically, and like, what does that typically look like, and where you're finding a lot of stuff?
Oh yeah, like little dry spots in the water. Usually it's ankle to knee deep water. The buck that I shot, I mean, he's coming out of probably knee deep water. So yeah.
And then is it you're sitting in one of those dry spots, or are you just trying to still find intersections of trails and sign out there in that kind of more swamp environment, and you're just setting up again kind of an intersection of where a lot of that sign's coming together?
Yeah, like I said, it's I do my postseason or preseason scouting. I'll find those same areas that I'm describing earlier, with a ton of rubs or whatever. But I kind of want to find like a hub with a ton of trails coming off of it, where I find my cluster of rubs. But usually where I find the cluster of rubs, like a ton of them that I'm looking for, there's usually always going to be trails everywhere. But that's the areas that I want to focus on.